Welcome to Rock Solid Families Podcast. This is Merrill Hutchinson alongside of lovely Linda, my wife, partner, rock solid baby. How are you?
We are in the rock solid mode this week. It is crunch time. Our
Game
banquet,
on.
Our banquet, as you're going to hear this, as we're recording, is less than a week away. And
Yeah,
so
we should remind people, if you still, there's a few seats left.
Yes.
If you still want to come to the banquet, which is Thursday night, you're hearing this on a Monday. Now, if it's after March 13th, you missed it. Yeah. But,
maybe next year.
Yeah. But, there are a couple seats left. So you can call our office at 812-576-7625. I'd love to have you there, right?
Yeah,
so
it's going to be exciting.
night.
Last year was our very first one. This is our 7th year, so it took us a while to kind of feel brave enough to try one. But I'm telling you, it was electric last year, just the energy in the room and the connections that people had and the community that was gathered together, whether it be principals, whether it be judges, whether it be state representatives, whether it be parents and families and clients and schools. And it was just, I'm so excited. I'm more excited than nervous because we have one under our belt now.
Yeah.
And we just know what happened last year. So I'm really excited. So
you remember what happened when I walked off the stage last year?
That you almost fell?
Yeah, my whole right hamstring went into a spasm, and I thought I was going to die and fall over in front of all those people.
And it was one step.
It was a little, guys, it was like a 2-inch step
riser
off the stage, and I stepped down, and for whatever reason, my hamstring went into a spasm, and I was like, and I kind
no one knew really.
No, they didn't. I covered well, and I sat down and looked at Linda, and I was like, I'm dying.
So if you came last year and you're coming again this year, we actually are going to be moving from the dining hall to the Life Center to have a bigger stage. So you're going to be in trouble because
I'll fall off of this one. Yeah.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. What are we talking about?
Well, we are going to, hon, there are always areas in life where people, they come in and they go, this area of my life seems to be okay, but this one's not. And there are, and there's a lot of interlapping, right? No part of life is separated. But a lot of times you can piece out a part of a person's life and say, how are you doing in this area? And if we can get this area buttoned up a little bit or approach it differently, we can start to see either some more happiness or success or just fulfillment in somebody's life. And so what we're going to do is we are going to break down it's kind of like the 8 essential emotional needs, but the 8 areas of your life, where we spend time. If you were to break this up into a clock, right, and just say not necessarily time, but these are the big parts of life.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one right, identify it, call it out.
Yeah.
My spiritual part is not good. Okay.
Yeah.
Then what can we do?
Yeah. So this is a tool that I use. I call it the personal goal sheet. And we really start with where are you, what's the squeaky wheel, right? What's the weak link? And so I have broken up, and I know I'm not the only one, has broken up our life into 8 different areas. And so we're asking you to go get a paper and pen, because if you're struggling or you feel stuck or you feel confused or overwhelmed, then it's probably in one of these 8 areas. And so it's really important, as you said, hon, to identify what area in my life. I'll never forget one of those times I've used this tool with a client, and she really had no idea why she was feeling anxious and overwhelmed. She really didn't know why she felt stuck. And when we broke her life down into these 8 areas, it was crazy how the low spots in her life, it was professionally and relationally. And here we identified the fact that she had moved from a job where she was around people all day, collaborating and doing life with. She had moved to a different kind of job where she worked from home by herself remotely.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that took a toll on her. And she didn't even realize that the connection of why she felt yuck was because of the change she had made professionally. And so just those little tweaks and being around people again changed her whole look on life.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, before we go any farther, let's thank our sponsors.
Okay.
We want to thank Maxwell Construction, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and the Hoosier Ice House. So they will also be at our banquet and helping to represent and just support, showing their continued support. So we do want to thank those guys. If you're doing any business with them, just thank them for their willingness to, in some ways stick their neck out there. They don't know exactly what we're going to say on these airwaves and stuff, but they trust, and they trust that the message of Christ and a better life, and better families and marriages are important things. So anyway, also we just want to thank, we are going to thank our sponsors and donors at the banquet. That's just going to be a big thing. But we thank all you guys for out there listening and sharing these shows. So thanks, and continue to give us 5-star ratings and share the shows.
Yeah, I'm getting my phone out because I didn't put my computer up thinking I didn't need it. And then I was like, there's a couple verses that I want to look up that I don't have memorized. So I'm going to
While you're doing that, I've talked about the 4-way stop. And the 4-way stop, the very beginning of the 4-way stop is this point of confusion. And, if confusion is left unchecked, it ultimately leads to craziness and chaos in life. People come into us all the time, and sometime in the session, you might hear something that my life's out of control. I don't have control of this. So when people are out of control, it's due to that initial confusion. And so recognizing the confusion, and it might be a single decision, but usually it's an area of life that's not been cleaned up too well. And so that's what we're really going to dig into. We're trying to clear up some of the chaos. And what happens if you're anything like me, because this is what my workbench top looks like right now, when you start to clutter things, right? Because you get busy with things, and I've been doing projects.
You
Linda,
have been,
but I don't.
But your workbench is a mess.
Well, because I'm only working an hour and a half here and there in the evenings and stuff. And the last thing I want to do is clean up every night and unpack it ready, because it takes 20 minutes to do that stuff. So I just go take tools and throw them on the workbench, and my workbench is a mess right now. And so it's chaos. And so now I know that the idea to clean that, I'm going to walk by it for 2 weeks and go, I just don't want to do this now. Because where do I start? Where do I start?
Well, maybe we should title this message Spring Cleanup, right? Spring Cleanup is like, let's reorganize things.
How about come to Merrill's house and clean up his toolbox?
So again, we want you to get a piece of paper and a pen, and we want you to write down these 8 areas, okay? These 8 areas of your life, and we're going to kind of go through them in a kind of a little bit of a sequential order. So the very first one I want you to write down is your financial life, okay? Your financial life. So that would include things like your budget, your savings, retirement, your giving patterns, like your income. How satisfied are you with your financial life? And I will tell you, this is where people think is going to make or break happiness. Like if I just made more money, if I had a better job, like this will make me happy. Right. And we're here to tell you it's not, but it's still an important thing. Right. You can't have that stressor of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'll be able to make the house payment, or the car's not going to be repossessed. So it can definitely be a squeaky wheel. Yeah.
The next area that we have in our life is our professional life. And I also want to qualify that. It doesn't necessarily mean your profession that you get paid for or not, because a stay-at-home mom has a profession. Yes. She may not be getting a paycheck in every week, but her professional life is taking care of those kids and that family. So, what do you do with your time? That would be kind of your role, right? Your position.
How satisfied are you with
your service? And and we know all the time, like, people get into jobs and they exist in the job, and it can drag you down, right? To the point where it's just same stuff, different day. So again, is it the most important thing in your life? No, it's not actually.
No.
But it is a big chunk of the pie.
And I have been on both sides of the fence where I was at work away from my family and I felt pulled to be home. And then I remember early on being a new mom, which I really was going stir crazy because I wanted to be back in the workforce. So it was like I've been in both worlds, ladies. So we're just asking for your satisfaction level. So what we're asking is for you to put a number by each one of these areas on a scale of 0 to 10. So 10 would mean like I am completely satisfied. It doesn't need any changing. It's where I want it to be. 10. Okay. 0 is it is a train wreck. It's not anything I want, and
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So, and a 5 would kind of be like on the fence, right in the middle.
So we've done financial life, professional life. What's the next one, hon?
The next one is intellectual life, and so I look at this as how satisfied are you in the area of learning and growing and reading and studying and doing new things? Like, are you really what's another word for it? Like,
No, are you growing?
challenged.
And I want to qualify that a little bit because, in school, you are taking subjects that many times you couldn't care less about.
Exactly.
Okay?
You're right.
And so that's not the type of learning we're necessarily talking about. What we're talking about is where's your interest?
Yeah.
And then are you digging into that?
Yeah.
You and I can joke about this. You're going to be digging in and learning about whether it's counseling techniques or new things like that. And I'm going to be reading a mountain bike book or how to tear something apart or a woodworking
muscles.
project or a workout thing.
Yeah.
The point is are you still curious about things?
Yeah.
And are you digging into that?
You know what? And both of our sons had scholarships for the Navy. And so it kind of pigeonholed them in the kind of degree they could have. And both of them were not satisfied. They hated it.
They're majors.
Yeah,
they're
majors. They're
yeah.
majors. And so it was kind of like they would have said they were kind of low in this intellectual life of just what they had to study, right?
Right.
And so that was a red flag to them. Like, this isn't what I don't want to be a mechanical engineer for a living. And so we want to really recognize that. So we're asking you to put a 0 to 10, somewhere in the middle. Obviously, 5 is kind of like on the fence. So is it like on the lower end or is it on the higher end? It'll give us an idea of where you're at there.
Yeah. So the next one is actually the rest of the show because I'm covering it. It's
your favorite.
It's your recreational area, your recreational life. And so, these are the things that can breathe life into us. Our job could, our spiritual life, all these different things we're going to talk about, they can. But recreation is more of that lighthearted, maybe I'll use a word, maybe this speaks volumes of me. It's a place of, I don't feel a ton of responsibility in life. It doesn't feel heavy. And so it's light and it's enjoyable. Okay.
If we're being honest, Merrill wanted to do a whole show just on that.
I'm not done with that yet. We're going to get to that show. But it's that idea of you go to get refreshed there. Yeah. You take a break from the other things. And sometimes, even Christ went away and rested, right? And so this is that recreational side of enjoying it. And again, like a game to one person does not necessarily mean it's a game for you. So you have to find your area of recreation.
Yeah. So we're talking in that recreation, like how much margin do you give yourself in the day, in the week, in the year, vacations, hobbies. You have criticized me, and rightly so, that I didn't really have a lot of hobbies. You had a ton of hobbies, and you kept going, get more hobbies, because that way I could have more you could have more hobbies.
Well, the only thing I know that your hobby is what is your work, and I just don't want to feel guilty about not being working all the time.
Because you'd rather be on a bike.
Because I'd rather be on a bike, where you'd rather be on a computer working on things. And I used to feel guilty, like, oh, she's doing work. And I'm like, nah, I've separated myself.
Yeah.
You can work all night long if you want, because it's still your hobby. Doesn't mean there isn't stuff. But I'm like, no, I draw the line and I'm going to recharge.
So, and I've had to learn, I still need to unplug, right? I still need to go read a book and sit and put my feet up and just kind of unwind. And so I know I got to go take a walk, or I need to work out, or I need to read. And so because I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I can relax and have recreation and be intellectually stimulated at the same time, or physically fit at the same time. So we're going to find that there is, like you mentioned, a lot of overlap in these areas. But sometimes it is, I don't have a hobby. We don't have anything we have for fun together, right? I don't know how to escape from my work. And if you don't have that, then your number's probably going to be pretty low.
Yeah. What's the next one? You want to do the next one?
So we just covered 4 out of the 8. And can I just say this? Like, the world says, like, these are the important things. How many toys you have, how much money you make, how many degrees you have or letters you have behind your name. And can I just say, that's not what the world, that's not what God sees. That's not what he wants us to prioritize, okay? And so even though they are important and they can be a squeaky wheel, they're not nearly as important as these next 4, okay? So we just kind of wanted to clarify that. Like, yes, pay attention, but man, let's reprioritize, okay? And so this next one is your physical life. Okay. Your physical health. So whether it be how well you're eating, your eating habits, how well you're sleeping, are you doing any exercise? Do you feel fit? Do you feel like you have energy, physically? And so this is a big area. And so if you feel overweight, or if you feel, sleep deprivation,
it's all you have to do is get sick for a little while,
man,
and you
that's
realize
true.
and so you realize
so right.
your health is so important. And so, you could be a few pounds overweight and still function really, really well.
Yeah.
But when you actually start getting sick, and hon, we have to face the music here. We're getting older.
Yeah.
And we're having friends that are getting sick, and cancer and things like that are becoming more common in our terms. And so that just changes the game. You could be the greatest at so many different things, but if you're sick and laying in bed or hurting, it just completely alters your quality of life.
Some of our darkest months have been this past January and February.
Yeah,
we
we're
went
done.
like 2 or 3
We're done.
weeks of flu, and we were trading it back and forth, and we were miserable, and we had no energy. And so you're right. It's a huge squeaky wheel that affects everything. So please don't ignore that. If you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, you're depriving your body of the things that are going to help you feel rested and satisfied and energetic. And so if you're eating nothing but Mountain Dew and Doritos, which used to be my diet, it doesn't go very well when you're my age, So physical health. So how are you rating that for yourself?
How about the next one, guys, is emotional health. There's a lot of things tied to this. So a thing that comes to my mind when we talk about emotional health is emotional stability and regulation, your ability, because emotions, like being flat and having no emotion or not showing it, that's not healthy. Okay. You may not cause other people
I'd never cry
issues, but that's not necessarily healthy. But also being unhinged and off the chain with constant drama and those kinds of things, that can be very difficult too. And so it's this swinging back and forth, in a very severe way, and not to make light of it, but like bipolar, when we're talking about a manic phase where there's this crazy high energy, lots of activity in the brain, and then the body becomes exhausted and the brain starts to depress, and so now I've got nothing. I don't have any energy. I don't have any desire. And so emotional life really starts to play in. A word that might come into mind is your moodiness. We all know people, and you might describe them, well, they're awful moody. And that is connected to our emotions. And so if I don't have good regulation of my emotions, good understanding, I do entire shows on fire alarms and fire drills, meaning recognize your emotions and bring them back so that the emotions don't drive your life. We talk all the time about people living a life that is directed by their feelings versus their logic and their rational mind. And so when emotions are running the show, people can really get out of whack.
Yeah. And a huge part of that usually is forgiveness. Like we're holding on to bitterness and resentment and anger and grudge holding from somebody who hurt you maybe decades ago or last year, and you haven't let that go. And so emotionally, that just creates this angst, right? This poison inside us, this toxicity that is not pleasant to be around. And it really doesn't help your day go better. And so peace is something huge that we fight for here, as well as just really our joy. Where do we find our joy? Is it about how much money I make or how many toys I have? Or is it about really emotionally feeling that peace that passes all understanding? So emotional health, what would you rate that? So that's another one.
You want to jump into the next one? Is it my turn or your turn?
Your turn. I want you to do this one.
I want to do.
All right, I'll do this one. Relationally. So this is a huge one, and it's really hard because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so you may be killing it at work with great relationships, and maybe your family of origin is really tight, but maybe your spouse and you are struggling, or maybe a child is estranged. And so I want you to overall your relational life. Okay. And yes, it's probably going to be the lowest. I remember teaching a mom's group one time, and I heard a mom say, "You're only as happy as your saddest child." And I was like, whoa, and so in other words, like that connection or that struggle. And so I was like, whoa, well, that's kind of sad to think about. Like,
I'd be cautious on that statement,
I
but
know,
I get it. I get
know.
why you'd say that, but yeah.
So we had a time to talk about that. Like, are you going to let that child's emotions run the show for you in your house?
Yeah.
But the point is that when you have a strained relationship, it does affect you, right? And so what is that rate right now for you? Is there unforgiveness between you and somebody else? To someone else, is there somewhere you need to make amends with? Is there estrangement there, disconnect, maybe drifting? And so how would you rate the satisfaction level of the relationships in your circle of influence there?
Yeah, we are called to be in relationship.
Yep.
God wants to be in relationship with us, which we're going to get to that here in a second. But that idea, it's not also about like how many friends, how many relationships.
No. How many followers you have on Facebook.
It's about, how connected you feel. And I think part of that is how willing are you to care for people, and how willing are people to care for you? You know, at the end of the day, if you knew somebody had your back, if somebody had my back, I can have some peace that there's somebody in my inner circle that has my back. And so that relationship thing is really important. That's one reason why, people go crazy when they're stuck in solitary confinement. They can't get a human touch, right? They can't get eyes to look at them and just get a feeling that somebody else cares about them.
Now, I will say part of the deal in relationships is that it's reciprocal. And so if you are looking at your relationship life right now, your relational life, and trying to assess it, like, is there people that would love on you?
Right.
People that would come and have your back. But if you're just a people pleaser and you're giving and giving and giving and giving and never receiving, then you really want to reevaluate that. Is it a reciprocal relationship that is healthy, or are you kind of codependent on people, or are you trying to please them or fix them, and it's all one-sided? So you really want this relational life to be healthy and reciprocal.
Yeah. Let's move to the last one. We're going to both do this last one because it is, we both have things to say on it. And so, guys, drum roll.
The top one.
This is really the top one, guys. And in many lives, it does not exist, or at least on the surface, it doesn't seem like it even exists. And so this is your spiritual life, right? And we could throw a lot of words in there. Faith, religion, God, a higher power, but the idea here that you have a spiritual life, and what the importance about that is that there is something that governs you that is greater than you, right? Something that why you do what you do. We yesterday at our little 8th grade summit,
youth summit,
you asked the question, what is your purpose?
In life.
Yeah, and like the kids, they're not quite connected. Most of them were not connected, and they would be like, my purpose is to eat candy bars.
No, the question was, why are you here? And they're like, because I have to be. Like,
right.
It's like, no, we're talking about in life.
In life. And so you have to have like, what is my purpose? And to really make that make sense, you've got to understand you're a creation of God, and that means you're perfectly and wonderfully made. In other words, he put all of your different attributes together for a reason. Like that one sperm and that one egg out of all the different thousands of combinations come and produce you. And so just that combination is perfectly made. And so now what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so not having an awareness or an appreciation that there is a spiritual life, that you have a heavenly Father who is pursuing you and wants a relationship with you. If that number is a 0 or a 1, you're really missing out on the thing that could bring you the greatest amount of peace, that can give you hope. We talked about last time, if you didn't listen to our show last week, about suicide and hopelessness.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, why are you here? I don't know. I don't have any reason to be here. Well, gosh, if that's not number 1 in your life, it is going to rule and control all the other things when you don't feel like there's a purpose, or you don't know what your identity is.
Yeah, guys, because it really is humbling, and it takes you off the throne and makes you realize that you don't have to have this all together. You don't have to control the world, because it's way too big and complex for you to do it. You will quickly feel out of control. And so handing that over to God is really where we have to start. And that's why, in the order that we put these, that's why spiritual life You've got to get that right first. When we talk to couples about the hierarchy of relationships, you've heard us, if you've listened to any of our shows, you hear this. The number one most important relationship you have is not your spouse. It's not your kids. It's not your hobbies. It's God. And that's because that means you have put God as the default of all things that will go back to him.
Yeah.
And once I have God as the starting point, then all things can work from him and out of him in terms of how I interact with people, how I spend my money, how I take care of my body. Everything will be connected back to the spiritual life.
Yeah. And so what we're asking you to do is those 8 areas we just mentioned, that instead of starting with financial, we're asking you to flip it and kind of create this upside down effect of those things we're going to put at the bottom of the priority list and put God and other relationships and our emotional life and our physical life. Those are the most important things, mind, body, spirit.
Right.
And then the other things will come. So I wanted to take you to Matthew 6 because I immediately thought of Matthew 6:33. These are Jesus's words. And he had just got done talking to his disciples and those who were listening, like, do not worry. He said, why are you worried about what you wear or what you'll eat? He's like, I got you. I take care of the birds. And then he says, the pagans, they run after all those things. So the money, the job, the titles, right? How many toys I have. He says, all of those things, your heavenly Father already knows that you need them. He knows that. He knows you need money to live, okay? But he says in verse 33, but seek first his kingdom. See, he's saying, put that first.
Right.
Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and then all these things will be given to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. He's like, stop worrying about the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
So, we mentioned 8 different areas, but we're really asking you to look at those different areas of how satisfied you are in those. And then I want you to circle 2 or 3 of the lowest numbers, okay? So if it is professionally or if it is relationally, circle those, okay? And then we're challenging you, okay? We're challenging you to set some goals, okay? This is spring cleaning. Spring is around the corner, I think, right?
I'll start with my workbench. Head over.
And so let's do some spring cleaning in our lives. Let's write those relationships in that priority list. And let's put some goals down of how to reshift things and how to help the things that are the weakest links right now and that we're so unsatisfied with according to what God wants us to do. So we call them SMART goals, okay? And SMART. And you might want to write these words down. Hun, do you know what the S stands for?
Specific.
Specific. So you don't want to say, I'm just going to go clean the workbench. Or, that's not very specific.
To start.
Well, I'm just going to clean. How about I'm just going to clean, okay? But if you say I'm going to clean the workbench by spring break, okay, then that's specific, okay? Measurable, okay? Measurable is the M, okay? So I can't say I'm just going to eat better.
Right.
Maybe it's I'm not going to buy any more sugar and ice cream at the store.
Right.
And so it's specific, it's measurable, okay? It's achievable is A, okay? I don't want you to say, I'm going to save $1 million in a month. Like, that's not achievable. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what the R is?
Gosh, man.
I'm testing
you.
You.
Off guard.
It's relevant.
Relevant, yeah.
So in other words, if your squeaky wheels are emotional, then I don't want you to, go and get a different job, unless that's where the emotional, instability is coming from. But I want it to be relevant to the weak areas, the areas you're not satisfied in your life. And then the T is time-based. In other words, in the next 2 weeks, in the next month, by next year, okay? And so like you and I have been trying to eat better. Okay, we started that in December.
I've fallen off a little bit from that. I started to fall off.
But my goal was 2 months. To 2 months, I was going to give it to do this plan to eat better. And so it was a SMART goal. It was specific and it was measurable, and and relevant and achievable and time-based. And so that helped me achieve my goals.
Yeah, I would say it's so important too, because you're talking about this, hon, and you have to be really careful. Linda said, pick the 1, 2, or 3 that are the lowest. Do not try to tackle everything at once. It's overwhelming, and then you're back into the chaos problem. Okay, and so you really start with one. Okay, find the one that's just really blowing apart that you can actually grab, and start to really go after that specifically. And I like, hon, the measurable part is you can see that, but the timetable is so important, especially for those of us who have ADHD, who can have all these squirrels going on, and the next thing you know, we will allow other things to jump on the calendar in front of it. And so to say, I'm going to have this done in 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months, whatever it is, like that is so important for you to start to actually see some progress.
Yeah. But what I love is that if you identify, like, let's say 2 or 3 areas that we were talking about of those 8, and then you can pick a goal that would kill 2 birds with one stone. Like, I love to walk. Well, I can't wait till it gets warmer because I'll love to walk for my recreation.
Right.
And it's going to help my physical body, right? I need exercise. So that's kind of one of those things where, just like that client I was telling you about the job and the relationships, like changing the job helped kill 2 birds with one stone.
Yeah.
And she didn't realize that she had kind of hurt both areas by that one decision she made.
Yeah, that goes back to all of these things are actually interconnected.
Yes.
We know people who are gifted at making money, so their financial world seems to be pretty solid and stable. But if their only goal is to make money, they typically, hon, this happens in late 40s, early 50s, where you'll get them kind of like almost a frustration of, is this all there is?
Yeah.
And
what
so,
do I do with this?
Yeah, and we've watched, because we're old enough to be through that people start to go, okay, what am I going to now do with this money?
Yeah.
And they start to bring it back into the spiritual side as, if they can do that, I am going to start building God's kingdom.
Yeah.
I'm going to build his kingdom. And now that's powerful,
Yes.
So all of these things can start to really be linked together. But it's when you isolate completely, I only need $1 million in my account, and it's about me. So I can tell everybody I have $1 million in my account. Like, that's when you're going to run into problems.
Yeah, especially when you've cut out relationships, right? Or God. And so all of a sudden you drive thinking it's it. But really, the reality is those areas of your life go down pretty far on the priority list.
Yeah.
And they hurt the other ones.
Yeah. Guys, these are your areas that we're looking at this week. We just challenge you. The challenge here is, listen, nobody here has a 10 in all of them. Because if you have a 10 in all of them, then you have a problem with this thing called lying. And that's
or arrogance.
Arrogance, yeah. And the deal is just because life is constantly changing and throws different things at us. Maybe you were healthy for a while, but now you've been fighting some illness, or you've lost your strength and your endurance and all that. There's just all kinds of different things here. And so the idea here is to focus a little bit, be honest, calling things out. I really need to do better about getting into God's word and maybe reinvigorating that. We are, as we're starting this, we are in the Lenten season, and many of you out there are doing things in these areas, that are reminding you, I need to do better because it's important. I want this to be healthy in my life.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I've seen quite a few who were challenged by their preacher to do a social media fast. So they're probably not going to be listening to this because they're on a social media fast, but in their mind, they're right-sizing their relationships, putting God first, and then actually talking to people, because it actually said, like, hey, if you need me, call me. Like, reach out to me on this thing called a phone that you can actually use to talk to people instead of texting and messaging each other. So we're hoping that we can help you right-size those relationships too.
It's a great time of year, guys, to kind of reshuffle the cards, to do some spring cleaning, and to get some things in line. So if there's anything that we can do, if you find that you're struggling trying to pull one or more of these areas into a proper, healthy place, reach out out to us. You can get us at Rock Solid Families. You're laughing. I must have said something wrong.
I'm just wondering if we could say it on the air that you're going to go clean up your workbench.
Not yet. I have one more. I have one more thing I have to do. I have a cabinet I have to put together.
I think we should take a picture of your before workbench.
That would be wrong. That would be wrong.
I'm just saying, like, a SMART goal. Like, we'll see. Maybe by the next show.
It is garbage night, and so I could actually just throw it all in the garbage and start.
We'll see. I'll give you an update and keep you posted.
Yeah. But guys, on a serious note, it's time to clean it up, right? It's time to get it together. And so if we can help with that, call our office, 812-576-7625. Do not allow this stuff to continue to clutter your life, hold you down, and just really, I was talking to a person the other day, how in the world does, a week turn into a month, turn into a year, and turn into a decade? How does that happen when you go, gosh, I've been dealing with this garbage for 10 years or more of my life. How did that happen? It happened one day at a time.
Yeah. So let's do some spring cleaning and let's reorganize and reprioritize the areas of our life. So we want to thank you so much for listening to the Rock Solid Families podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.
Rock Solid Families would like to thank Hoosier Ice House for being a proud sponsor of the Rock Solid Families podcast. In the heart of historic Lawrenceburg, Indiana, the Ice House is at the corner of Vine and High Streets. The historic building evokes a feeling of comfort with spacious indoor and outdoor dining, a large bar, and comfortable dining areas. Large enough to host parties, yet intimate enough to feel like your favorite neighborhood restaurant. So thank you again for the Hoosier Ice House for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast.